Do you have any idea how hard it is to prosecute a cop?
Anyone who threatens the security of the people will be executed.
It's not just a question of whether or not to use violence. There simply is no other way, Inspector.
It was the style in those days to categorize people. Conservative people were calling liberal people communists, and liberal people were calling conservative people fascists.
Dirty Harry was pretty representative of divisions in American society at the time of the films.
This wasn't a good liberal movie. It didn't have any pat homilies in it. What it did have to say are some very troubling things about law and right and wrong and what you can do and what you can't do and what sometimes you have to do in order to keep the balance.
Dirty Harry's saying, we know what's right and wrong. We don't care what the law says. We know inherently, human beings know what's right and wrong. They know evil when they see it.
When it came out, Dirty Harry wasn't considered an action movie, wasn't considered a popcorn movie. It was like the movie to see because it was kind of controversial.
Oh, shit.
Dirty Harry movie was a hot button movie. It seemed to confront in a very unconventional way issues about race and the role of cops in law enforcement, and seemed to come to some very troubling conclusions. Harry enjoyed a righteous kill.
There were political discussions about this rogue cop, who took the law into his own hands. He's a maverick, but with a badge.
The first time I heard the word anti-hero, it was in reference to Clint Eastwood's character in Dirty Harry.
He's the guy who saves the day, except he's the guy who doesn't do it the way you're supposed to do it. He's not squeaky clean. He's not perfect. He has biases.
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
It caused a tremendous stir. Many of us who considered ourselves liberals were initially shocked, or at least we asserted that we were shocked.
Being this is a .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off, you've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
There was this cop blowing people away with this gun, perceived by many of us on the left as this neo-fascist icon.
My friends in New York felt that I had sold out and got myself involved in some fascist vision of the world.
There was a lot of high feeling about that in those days. Everything was political. The mantra was everything was political.
Either you're for us or you're against us.
I do not believe that Clint foresaw the critical eruption that movie stirred. I mean, it was stirred particularly by Pauline Kael.
I remember Pauline Kael, the critic. She called it a Gestapo movie.
Though she conceded that it was a fairly masterful cop drama, she made this kind of weird charge that it was kind of a fascist film.
I mean, fascist is a word that's used pretty loosely, as we see even today discussions about this. But having said that, I probably do agree that there's a small f fascist principle in Dirty Harry. Probably the best single Dirty Harry dialogue bite is,
Nothing wrong with shooting. All the right people get shot.
If you're looking for evidence that there's something fascist in these movies, that's a very good piece of evidence. What Harry does is to be a law enforcement officer who doesn't pay attention to the fine print and who simply knows what's right and who simply goes out and simply does it.
The Dirty Harry character represents the guy with the hunch, who just had the gut sense. He knew what was right. He could look at you and he'd know. Whereas the management is all about the rules and the technology, and they want you to use these computers and to crunch those data and to share with the other technocrats and to work together. And that's the new world that the cowboy hero whom Dirty Harry represents, he doesn't know this world. He doesn't want to work in it. He wants to ride the range. He wants to use his six gun.
If you take that as a mythic solution to a popular desire, then it's not fascist. If you take it as a real picture of how police work ought to go, then it definitely is fascist.
The fascist thing, that was a take, and hey, it put a little bit of a touch to the fact that all publicity is good publicity, because in the controversy, it became more interesting to a lot of people to go see it. But it lingered there for me for a while, as far as when people, everywhere I'd go, people would ask me about that sort of thing. I really couldn't stop to think too much or care about it, because I was busy on to the next project, whatever that might be, whether fascist or communist or whatever.
People use the word fascist too much. They use the word racist too much. You know, they just use it as a word sometimes. You know, and it works because it gets people's attention. But those words should really mean something. You shouldn't just throw those words around.
I think that critics exist to criticize. And there's an awful lot of things that are going on that are a lot more criticizable and a lot more violent and a lot more horrible than a Dirty Harry film. It's not Mary Poppins, and it wasn't meant to be. And really, it didn't seem to make much of a difference in the success of the franchise.
The picture had come out and it was very popular, and I didn't put too much stake in all that. I figured that that person was probably writing for their own enjoyment or their own constituency, to show other people in her profession how she could take a unique take on something rather than really critique the film. And if you don't like certain elements of it, then go ahead and point them out and really do film criticism, which is critiquing.
On that note, in the Deadpool, of course, there is, amongst the murder victims, there is a movie critic of about Pauline Kael's age and about Pauline Kael's build. So Pauline Kael is murdered in a Dirty Harry movie, which is highly appropriate given her critical attitudes towards Harry films.
What? I said, do you like my films?
You take it in the spirit it is, and you enjoy it in the spirit it is. And I had sort of always adhered to the old Alfred Hitchcock, you know, it's only a movie, you know, kind of a feeling. And yeah, it became a little controversial, but that never bothered me. I've never shied away from that.
Anti-war demonstrators protest U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War.
I think it's impossible to look at anything without remembering the time in which it was done. So this is the early and mid-70s, a time of political upheaval. And right smack in the middle of that, you know, 2 years after the Summer of Love, comes Harry Callahan, who is as blunt, as straight, as politically incorrect, and as effective a cop as there ever is and ever was.
There's no decade in Hollywood history, like the first part of the 1970s, for pessimism. There were a lot of liberal movies at that time, and the liberal movies were movies of dissolution. All of these kind of neurotic people who quite often are like losers in the characters that they play, quite often died. It was a time that was hard for heroes, and a more right-wing audience, a more conservative audience, was really missing some kind of principle of the right in both the political sense and just the dictionary sense. For a character like Clint Eastwood in Dirty Harry to come along in that environment and to assert himself, to take control of the story, to take control of all the things that were happening in the world around him, was something that was much appreciated, was really needed by the audiences.
It's very interesting that Dirty Harry exists in San Francisco, which then is viewed as one of the most liberal cities in the country. And therefore, it is the perfect place to put a character that you want to show as the most liberal, on first glance, character you could possibly have.
He's right in the enemy citadel here. So, you know, he can act out in this liberal, hippie environment, and everybody in his audience is just going to love it that much more because he's going to be sticking it to these, well, fill in the blank for what bad thing you want to call people if you're of a certain political persuasion.
There was a hint of political correctness then. It wasn't called political correctness, but you just didn't talk about those kind of things. And cops being constantly called pigs and stuff like that. They loved Dirty Harry. And there was a whole side of America that loved Dirty Harry.
People who Nixon characterized as the silent majority responded to it with tremendous enthusiasm and were able to disregard anything negative at all in those films and simply appropriate this kind of heroic savior-like quality that attached to Harry.
These days, a cop kills a hoodlum on the street, he might as well just dump the body someplace. Because those snot-nosed young bastards down at the DA's office will crucify him one way or another. A hood can kill a cop, but let a cop kill a hood?
Dirty Harry comes right after the Miranda decision and right before Watergate. It really is ground zero of the gray area of what is morality.
He doesn't like authority, which is a very conventional, heroic attribute in all American movies. But when the authority seems to be repressively liberal, his anti-authoritarianism becomes exhilaratingly troubling. It really gets you thinking about where you're at and where he's at.
The film obviously has a big issue with liberal law enforcement practices. Miranda and Escobedo are both mentioned by name in the original Dirty Harry movie. The idea that criminals are being allowed to run rampant and society has emasculated itself.
I think people were still picking up their paper and say, why are we coddling these criminals? What is this?
Explain the legal technicality dealing with the lack of admissible evidence.
That's a legality that can't be explained at this time.
His difficulties in obtaining an indictment against this Andy Robinson character. We said, really? Is it that hard? Many of us we just didn't know.
The very heinousness of the bad guy's crime allows him to get away. Because what he's done is so awful, bury a girl with a limited time to breathe. Dirty Harry has to use unconstitutional methods to get to her. So now the criminal gets back on the street, the evidence is thrown out, and that angers us. That really addresses everything we hate about how society coddles the criminal and blames the victim.
Fuck the courts, that's what I think. They've already wasted too goddamn much time worrying about the rights of killers on the street.
Because we saw the dark side of the villain, we were willing to overlook any small transgressions against the law that he would make.
Go on out and get some air, fatso.
Such as stepping on Andy Robinson's leg.
Where's the girl?
I have the right to life. I have rights.
Audiences cheered. And he was a guy who was brutalizing a suspect, let's say. But again, because we saw what this guy did throughout the entire film, the audience went with Harry every step of the way in doing what he had to do to bring this guy to justice.
I've got nothing personal against you, Callahan. But we can't have the public crying police brutality every time you go out on the street.
Well, you just might need me on a job like this.
It makes you think of the Aaron Sorkin line from A Few Good Men. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. Much as people might not want to admit it, people are pretty quick sometimes to put down police until they hear a noise and something goes bump in the night. And then you want Harry Callahan there.
I think deep in the heart of every liberal, burns this conservative that you would just like to bypass the court system and bypass everything and just shoot a guy and get it over with.
I'm a fairly liberal thinker. In fact, I consider myself reasonably liberal on just about all things, with the exception of law enforcement. I think I can become the biggest right-wing war hawk when it comes to the police and allowing them to kind of enforce that which separates us from complete anarchy. And I think that certainly Harry Callahan was one of the forefathers of that movement.
Look, I'm coming down there in 5 minutes. You better have those files open, you pencil-pushing son of a bitch.
One thing you know about Dirty Harry is that he's angry. And that's that violent anger is the thing that people are able to associate.
I'll leave what you are to me, little man. You're just a maggot who sells dirty pictures.
I mean, if somebody cuts us off on the freeway, we can't do anything about it. But, you know, Dirty Harry can shoot them, you know, it's just great. And he was always on the side of right.
We're talking about a certain kind of ethic, an edgy ethic, between right and wrong. What do you do with the lawless? How do you maintain a world in which the law controls?
The great statement that's attributed to Churchill is, to be a great man, you can't be a good one. Harry Callahan wasn't going to be a good man and follow the lines. He was going to be a great man in terms of taking these people down, that somebody had to do this job.
There was a right way to do things and there was a wrong way. And he didn't really concern himself with the gray areas and the middle ground.
The law is a very poor instrument for enforcing the right. What you need is some figure who has the right ideas imbued in his bones, and somebody who is strong enough to enforce that.
I think it was a big misperception that he's a Republican and he's, you know, this right-wing guy. And if you look at the movie, it never comes across. His morals are very clear. He has issues, but he's not going to put them upon you. But if you're a freak and you're getting out of line anyway and trying to screw people over in a dangerous way, he's going to do you in. It's a very clear line there.
Harry does have a code. Well, at least he's being consistent in his approach to the universe. And that's an admirable thing. Where it gets a little dicey is, well, how far is he allowed to go on his own that he would not suddenly become the very thing that he's fighting against?
Go ahead. Make my day.
I think what that comes down to is the perceived necessity to fight fire with fire.
One reason there have been so many interesting chapters to the Dirty Harry saga is that each movie finds a different refraction of this code with which he acts and which he reacts to, given the circumstances.
Good guy. Alaskan was a good guy.
If you cross the line, whether you're a policeman or a criminal, he'll still come after you. And I think the example is Magnum Force, where he goes after some of the best officers in his own department and guys that you think that he would identify with and maybe even be on their side. But no, he takes them down because they're criminals and they're doing the wrong thing.
You heroes have killed a dozen people this week. What are you going to do next week? Kill a dozen more?
Let's do an interesting sequel. We've done one side of this coin. Let's do the other. What happens when we go too far? How do we deal with it? Where is that line? I thought that was very interesting, the idea of examining where that line is.
It's as though when Pauline Kael and other reviewers said that Dirty Harry was fascist, Magnum Force sets out in response to these accusations by saying, no, you want to see fascists? I'll show you fascists. And it gives you these traffic cops in their black uniforms and their white helmets, and they look like Nazi stormtroopers. That's a fascist. A fascist is not Dirty Harry.
Magnum Force almost stands out among sequels in that it is sort of an answer. It is deliberately the other side of the coin.
Think he's going in one way, in fact goes to exactly the other. And that's exactly what he did with Magnum Force. So he thinks that this is some sort of right-wing law and order picture. Now he's going to make a picture where law and order itself is compromised and called into question.
What was great about that was, I mean, that even Dirty Harry had a line that he wouldn't cross.
I'm afraid you've misjudged me.
And then there were a bunch of guys who were out there really crossing the line. Those guys were just out and out fascists, and he wasn't about that.
But they were the antithesis of Harry, see, because they were essentially doing the same thing that he was setting out to do. He was just going to clean it up. And they started to do kind of the same thing, but it wasn't right. It was an interesting balance. It really, I think, kind of solidified the Dirty Harry character.
Evil for evil, Harry. Retribution.
That's just fine. How does murder fit in? You know, when police start becoming their own executioners, where's it gonna end, huh, Briggs? Pretty soon you start executing people for jaywalking and executing people for traffic violations. Then you end up executing your neighbor because his dog pisses on your lawn.
The fact that the second movie puts Harry in opposition to the cops makes Harry's own flinty morality stand out in even stronger relief than the first one.
What it tried to show is that he was a police officer who didn't dislike the laws and the setup the way it was. He just disliked how it had disintegrated into a bureaucratical nightmare. But he wasn't contesting the Constitution of the United States.
You got a chance to join the team, but you'd rather stick with the system.
Briggs, I hate the goddamn system. But until someone comes along with some changes that make sense, I'll stick with it.
Else, I just thought it was a really good idea, period. And a good dramatic idea, because then you get into a situation where Dirty Harry becomes conflicting with him in himself. You know, what do I do?
This is something sequels don't do at all now. Sequels today will be, how can we have more of the same thing? Let's just do the same thing and have more special effects. Let's do the same thing and have longer car chase or more wisecracks or something like that.
And later on in the Dirty Harry series, the moral dilemmas that Harry Callahan faced became considerably more complex.
There's a pattern in Dirty Harry movies. The first Dirty Harry movie has a nightmarish exaggeration or caricature of a left-wing villain. Scorpio, with his famous peace symbol belt buckle and all of his hippie mannerisms, is a left-wing villain. In Magnum Force, you have a caricature of right-wing villains, vigilante cops, fascist cops in uniform. When you get back to The Enforcer, now we're back on the left for a set of villains who are modeled on the Symbionese Liberation Army and various other kinds of organizations of extreme left-wing violence that happened in that general era. And then in Sudden Impact, you go back in the other direction again, and you have a villain who is a right-wing vigilante killer. There is that alternation, left, right, in the first 4 Dirty Harry movies.
Like many great American movies, Dirty Harry is a very serious film masquerading as a major candidate for the box office. But it turned out to be not only a big hit, but a lot more than just another piece of genre filmmaking.
What more can you do than raise a moral issue, give this broad, raw, constantly tense narrative, and present one of the greatest and most powerful, iconic figures in the history of crime fiction?